Live from St. Louis, welcome everyone to the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller, sponsored by Kelly's Little Nipper, and a special St. Louis sponsor from Ross Peterson from Agency, Iowa. Thank you to our sponsors, and welcome to the Championship Sunday show here live from St. Louis. Drake and Bradley, one of these two teams are going to punch their ticket to the big dance. One of the first teams in the nation to punch their ticket, with this being one of the more earlier conference tournaments, and a lot of storylines going into this game. Bitter rivals, some of the strongest teams in the last few years. Second time in the last 3 years, the championship has come down between the Braves and the Bulldogs. Last time out was 2 years ago. Drake swept the floor with the Braves. Storylines for Drake fans. If Drake happens to lose this game, are they still in the NCAA tournament? Or are they kicked out, becoming one of the first teams ever to have a 29-4 record with an undefeated quad one record and not make the big dance? Bradley fans, are you feeling like this is you have to win it to get in? Or are you thinking you have an outside shot of getting into the NCAA tournament? Lot of great stuff to get to, from the semifinal rounds to great games, and then a lot to preview for the championship round. But first and foremost, thank you all so much throughout this week of joining me, of being included in and being involved with the social media posts that we do here at Media Row. Thank you all so much for making this happen. Wasn't sure when I was having my car issues, when we didn't even have a sponsor, if I'd be able to make it down here. And yes, while Kelly's Little Nipper, we're super grateful to them, and Ross Peterson at Agency, Iowa, we definitely wouldn't be here without them. But we couldn't even pitch to them if it wasn't for you listeners and those involved here at Media Row. So just want to say thank you, and hopefully you truly enjoyed the Arch Madness coverage we brought to you this week. It was really busy, late nights. I'm pre-recording this one at midnight, going to probably stay up until 2 a.m. to make sure it's edited and pretty for you guys to view on YouTube or listen to wherever you get your podcasts. But really hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast. It's a dream come true to be able to do something like this. So really appreciate you, the listener, and just wanted to say thank you. You'll probably hear me say it 1,000 times like I do when I end every show, but really appreciate it. Let's jump into basketball, though, because you don't want to hear me talking about what has already happened. You want to hear about today, Championship Sunday, the day we've all been waiting for. Thursday, driving in, you're thinking about this game, and maybe these are the two teams you are thinking about. But Drake took the floor first, so we'll start with them in the semifinals, taking down Belmont in a great game, back and forth, 57-50. Drake able to come out on top against Belmont. They now go to the Missouri Valley Conference Championship for a fifth straight season. Incredible to think about, just because when I was in high school, or like junior high and early high school, freshman, sophomore year, friends, hell, even teachers, kind of when you would say, are you a Cyclone or Hawkeye? And I'd go, no, I'm a Drake Bulldog. People would kind of give you that, "Aw," and it felt like a pat on the head, which those teams played on Thursday, lost on Thursday. Multiple seasons where they didn't eclipse over 10 wins. So it's understandable. But man, has things turned around here at Drake. And then for Bradley, on the other hand, since they hire Wardle, he has become a beast in this conference. I mean, Bradley, again, with over 20 wins. Again, being one of the more feared teams and balanced teams in the conference. So just incredible streak from both of these teams, but really impressed with how Drake has turned it around. 5 straight years of the Missouri Valley Conference championship appearance, looking to become the first team since SIU in the mid-90s to win 3 straight after beating Bradley in 23, beating Indiana State last year. But let's get into this Drake-Bradley or Belmont game and talk about just what happened. How did it get to a Drake victory? So first half wasn't pretty. Belmont plain and simply, Belmont hit shots Drake didn't. Belmont was nailing threes, feeling really comfortable from behind the arc. Drake, probably one of their worst offensive performances we've seen all year. Drake, 2 of 13 from behind the arc. And also, which the 2 of 13 is rare. Wasn't expecting them to come off that cold. But we've seen this offense have lulls. But we usually see the rebounding, the defensive effort stay consistent throughout the whole game, through both halves. The scoring comes, ebbs and flows. The rebounding, though, was really concerning in that first half. Belmont rebounded Drake and just was letting the Bruins control the pace. So the defense wasn't there as well. Drake was down by 12 at one point in the game early in that first half, which matched their largest deficit of the season. Now Drake was able to come back from that deficit when they beat Murray State in Murray State, but it was going to need some work. So Drake gets off to a bad start, was down 30-21 at halftime. Belmont, that offense looked like the conference leading points per game team. They were hitting on everything, really comfortable offensively, moving the ball. Their ball movement was really impressive from Belmont early on. But while, there were some concerns, I actually had kind of a glass half full feeling about Drake. And maybe that makes me a homer, but like I've always said, I try to watch these games from as neutral of a standpoint as possible. Don't wear Drake gear when I go to these games. But I felt comfortable because, like I said, that was probably Drake's worst offensive performance we've seen in a half all year long. One of the worst. It's up there with the loss to Murray State. But with all that being said, and with how easy Belmont was scoring and how they were knocking down everything they were putting up, Belmont was only up by 9. And you just had the feeling Sturts was going to find a rhythm. You knew Banks was going to be consistent. You know the two consistent scorers on this team that have been the two most consistent all year were going to start to find their rhythm. So, in pure fashion, Bennett Sturts says, "Hold my beer," as we kick off the second half. Sturts leads Drake out of the gates with an 8-2 run right off the bat, and he scores all 8 points. And it was fast pace. They weren't passing the ball around. When we said Drake is allowing the Bruins to control the pace, the Bruins are a team that wants to move fast. Drake is a team that likes to dig into that shot clock, as we all know. But something clicks with Sturts where I've talked to him and he's mentioned where he just knows moments that he just needs to put the ball in the basket for the team, take over. And that's what he did. He comes out of the gate. They go on an 8-2 run. And then on top of that, I also had a comfortable feeling, despite being down 9, that the Bulldogs were going to make this a game and weren't going to just curl up, because they haven't done that all season. And they have one of the most aggressive, defensively minded coaches in all of college basketball, in Ben McCollum, who you knew he was going to get on those guys. They were going to stop allowing so many open shots. We're going to start crashing the glass, and we're going to get their defensive minds right. And that's what they did too. Drake's defense, they were able to cause so many turnovers in that second half, and it got Drake their first lead with 9.5 minutes to go. Drake didn't have a lead until 9.5 minutes left in the game. And it starts on the defensive end. Sturts, while he was doing great on the offensive end, you need, for this Drake team to get back into a rhythm, they've always relied on fast break points and turnovers to get that juice back up and flowing. And that's what they did. First off and foremost is, yesterday during the show, I mentioned how, I was just really impressed with how Drake was hedging screens. I think I said the same about UNI. But Drake, I was just really impressed with how they communicated and guarded the three-point line. Now, they improved on that in the second half, but really struggled in the first half. What impressed me in this game against Belmont was hands are always active. Hands are always up without fouling, too. Hands are always up, and communication again was one of the prettiest things we've seen defensively from this team in the second half. There were multiple moments where guys like Abreu, who are not even guarding the ball, have their hands up, and due to communication and just them being active and in everyone's space, when the ball is passed and they don't even see it coming, they're able to tip it. Drake gets a fast break and scores on the other end. Little plays like that lead to huge runs that we see from the Drake Bulldogs. I mean, 14 points off of turnovers, the hands up on defense, tip balls when it looks like they have eyes behind their heads was incredible. And it looks like they have eyes behind their heads because in a sense they do. When you have guys like Isaiah Jackson, you have guys like Bennett Sturts who are communicating and being active on defense. And the whole team defensively really put in a strong effort. In the press conference, post-game press conference, Coach McCollum said something really interesting about Isaiah Jackson of, if people are going to look at Bennett Sturts being the spark offensively for this team and what led Drake to the 7-point victory, they need to look at Isaiah Jackson off the bench or on the defensive end of really becoming a huge factor. And what I loved from Isaiah Jackson is he had multiple times where he got a steal, is driving down the lane, and usually he's passive and tries to dish it to Sturts. Belmont, you could tell, was playing that way, and throughout the season we've seen him, even though you see the defense kind of reading your mind, he still tries to attempt that pass. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But this time he stayed aggressive and had 2 buckets when Sturts was next to him. That was really impressive. Just loving to see his aggressiveness, whether he's 100% or not. But defensively, Drake just really locked down. And during that stretch where they had 14 points off of turnovers, in the final 5 minutes where craziness happened, Belmont had 5 turnovers. And it's just due to how physical and how active this Drake defense is. But even though, because with this Drake team, nothing can be easy, Drake couldn't take advantage of those turnovers and really put the Bruins away during that 5-minute stretch when they were turning over the ball like crazy and taking awful shots, because Drake on the other end offensively goes through a 4-minute scoring drought. So you just have a back and forth game, both teams really struggling offensively, Drake taking bad looks. But then what a lot of people talked about on social media when I put out the post, and a lot of fans just in the Valley in general that maybe weren't Drake or for Belmont, was just a lot of weird calls. And none bigger than with 2:46 to go in the game. The game's tied at 46. And Bennett Sturts and the Drake offense has their worst possession of the game. Sitting there, media row, and Sturts is dribbling the ball, and they're trying to bleed out this game clock. We know Drake likes to do that. They don't like to push the pace. Those DeVries teams, they always try to push the pace at the end. This Drake team, they're really trying to melt the game clock down and limit Belmont's possessions in a tight game. Drake, though, or Sturts, milking that clock. Guys are trying to set screens. He's telling them to go, like ISO. And with about 4 seconds to go, Sturts tries to make a move, and Belmont plays tremendous defense of hedging up, bringing 2 guys so that when Sturts gets face guarded on this side and he tries to do a spin around, there's another Belmont guy, and by that time, the shot clock's run out. Great planning and honestly great execution by the Bruins. But they call a foul as Sturts just jacks up a shot as the shot clock is about to expire. And I will say, from my point of view, bailed. At no point did I see a Bruins guy even come close to hitting Sturts. I think Sturts did a good job of The shot was difficult, so he's going to have to contort his body, but made it look, and all players do this. It's something you see in the NBA, you see it everywhere. But the ref on the opposite end, that's the concerning part, calls the foul. So not only does Drake get to go and shoot 3 free throws now from Bennett Sturts, they come out as they check the clock or to check the shot to make sure he was at the 3-point line or not. And actually, I misspoke there. They did reverse it to a 2-pointer. But head coach Anderson for Belmont lets the refs hear an earful, and rightfully so. I mean, I think it was an awful call. But they give him a technical foul, and that just flipped the switch right there of the game. All the momentum went to Drake, because now instead of just getting 2 free throws, they now get 4. Drake goes 2 for 4 at the free throw line. Drake shot the ball 25 times from the charity stripe, made 19 of them. And with all that craziness, all that momentum shifting right back over to Drake, Drake is able to take down Belmont and win 57-50. And want to pull up a note here that came from Mike Mahon, who, of course, we have mentioned a lot during this St. Louis trip because he's been amazing with helping out the broadcasters and us at Media Row with all these great stats. And this one is fantastic as Drake wins 57-50. And they're making their 5th straight appearance in the Arch Madness Championship game. The last team to do that, and the only other team to achieve that, was Tulsa, back when Tulsa was in the Valley from 1982 to 87. Ben McCollum, some more notes on him, is the first Valley coach to lead his team to the Arch Madness Championship game in his first season since Loyola's Drew Valentine did it in 2022 where they beat the Drake Bulldogs. So 2 huge, just historical notes there by Mike Mahon, so really appreciate him. But a weird ending gives Drake a weird victory as they head to their 5th straight Missouri Valley Conference Championship. Before we get into the Bradley Valpo game, which was just as good as the Drake one, quick little shout out to Kelly's Little Nipper. Kelly's Little Nipper, of course, has been our title sponsor, and we look forward to having them along for a while, we hope, with Media Row. And just want to say thank you to Jeff for allowing me to be able to join the community there at Kelly's Little Nipper. Had great reaction. I put out a video on Thursday live from the arena of just thanking the Kelly's Little Nipper fans for allowing me to be a part of their community, and really excited to build a following in this community and be a part of all the great things they do, because again, one of the main reasons I wanted Kelly's Little Nipper and why I was so excited about it was because it's not just a bar to drink at. They have, a great area where you can watch games, great viewing, live music, great food. So, I have family members that don't drink, and I can bring them there and we can have a great time because there's so much other things. It's not just a bar. It's really a place to go hang out and have a great time. And if you do show up to Kelly's Little Nipper, make sure to let them know that Media Row sent you there. By the way, Jeff, because I know you're listening, a lot of people over at Ballpark Village really stoked that you are hopping on with Media Row. So be sure to start seeing a lot of Drake fans, even more, showing up to Kelly's Little Nipper. I'm excited about that as well. Shout out to Kelly's Little Nipper for being the title sponsor here for Media Row. Moving on to the second semifinal game, Bradley against Valpo. Valpo becoming the Cinderella in St. Louis. They may have the former freshman of the year, have the current freshman of the year in the Valley, but still hit with the 11th seed. They get through the first round. They're able to push through the quarterfinal with a great back-and-forth battle against UNI, and now are 1 game away from playing in the championship game. But they're going up against one of the strongest, lengthiest, deepest teams in the Valley and Bradley. And that's ultimately what gave Bradley the 70-65 victory over Valpo. But it wasn't easy for Bradley. Both Drake and Bradley, I think, are going to be worn out. Drake, of course, because of just how long the starters are out there, but also just in terms of how physical, how intense these games have been. And, I mean, no games in the conference tournaments you really ever expect to be easy. But, man, I really did think with Valpo, with how they got through UNI and how emotional and just back and forth that game was, and how this would be their third game in 3 straight days, I thought Bradley was going to be able to handle them, especially with their size. But that was not the case. The first half was all right. And you like what I did there. I like what I did there. All right, the freshman of the year for the Valpo Beacons and in the Missouri Valley Conference. First half, unstoppable. I mean, honestly, you watch two performances like that from him, and you can't help but sit there and think, that dude just made a lot of money from playing these 2 games. One, probably going to get more NIL deals from Valpo if he stays. But more importantly, 2, I don't know if he stays. With 2 performances like that on a big stage against good teams, against really good defensive teams, and he's unstoppable, Power 5 schools are going to be looking and calling for a young freshman guard that can do everything. Pass, good defense, hell of a shooter. So he goes out there, 18 points in the first half, 7 of 10 from the field, 4 of 5 from behind the arc. And Valpo jumps out to a quick lead at halftime. Valpo jumps out. And Bradley, though, they didn't play bad. Bradley did not play bad whatsoever. They shot 10 of 27, really good ball movement, where they had 6 assists on 10 field goals. So Valpo was only up by 3, 34-31. But again, very similar to the Drake game, while Valpo looked like they were making everything, you just had the feeling that with how great of a coach Brian Wardle is and all the experience this team has, you felt like the 3 points and how efficient Valpo wasn't going to last for a while. And then in the second half, this is where the true call-in response comes about between these 2 teams, because it felt like neither could gain momentum. It seemed like as soon as Bradley would knock down 2 shots in a row, I mean, half of this arena is filled with red t-shirts and jerseys with how well Bradley fans travel. But you would feel their energy get up. You have Wardle pumping up the crowd. You're sitting there watching this and you're going, okay. I mean, there's multiple notes here on my main paper of possible turning point, possible turning point, possible turning point. And it seemed like they could just never get over the hump, get the momentum back on their side, because they would hit 2 shots. Now Valpo hits 2 shots. And while their fans are doing a little better on traveling to St. Louis, their little bit of fans able to get loud and start cheering them on, then you start thinking, okay, is this the turning point? What's happening here in the second half? Just back and forth game. And then you found the true turning point. And it happened with a great adjustment from Brian Wardle. So originally he had Duke Dean covering All Right. And Dean's a great defender. Yes, he's short, but All Right isn't great, or isn't tall. But he puts in Johnson, who I've been a huge fan of and could have won 6th Man of the Year. But he puts in Johnson, who it looked like his sole purpose was, don't worry about the other 4 guys. They'll do their job. You do not leave your eyes off of All Right. And that's what he did. And All Right really struggled in that second half. At one point, he was 1 of 5 for shooting. And you just had Bradley at that point really taking advantage of Valpo's shooting slump. And it starts with how Valpo was starting to build up fouls. They had 7 fouls going with 9:20 left, down by 4. They were down 55-51. You had a flagrant on All Right with 10 minutes to go at one point. So fouls were picking up. Bradley was at the free throw line a bunch. I mean, the similarities between Drake's game and Bradley's game is wild because both teams really controlled the free throw line. And it just started with how strong the defensive effort was from Johnson and how he was able to shut down Valpo's top player. And then Schwieger, just with the size that Bradley is able to have, he struggled, and just great adjustments. But with all those adjustments and trying to take over the momentum, that was still difficult for each team. Again, like 2 nights ago, the final 3 minutes is where Bradley was able to get control. And it really starts with just the free throws and fouls. So knowing that they were in the bonus, Bradley, knowing they have the size advantage, just charged the lanes. They were charging the lanes, forcing Valpo to either have to cleanly block the shot or they were going to the free throw line. And I took down the notes for the final 3 minutes. Bradley only went 1 of 1 from the field, but that's because they went 3 of 5 from the free throw line. And Valpo, on the other hand, at this point when they're just trying to make stuff happen, understanding the shot or the clock's against them, go 0 of 8 from the field in the final 3 minutes. Bradley just controlled it with the free throw lines, understanding the difficult position the Beacons were in. So charging the lane, using that size, that is what led Bradley to a 5-point victory. And so Bradley, searching for their first Arch Madness championship since 2020, when they went back-to-back, they beat Northern Iowa in 2019 and then beat Valpo, interestingly enough, in 2020. But so Brian Wardle trying to win his third Arch Madness title with the Bradley Braves. Drake, of course, like we've said, trying to win their third straight Missouri Valley Conference tournament title, which hasn't been done since the mid-90s with Southern Illinois Salukis. So what are the keys for Drake to pull off this historic win in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament and not have to sweat out a selection Sunday on if they're in or out? They will have solidified themselves and punched their ticket into the NCAA tournament. Here are my 3 keys. 1, the role players have to step up and help out Bennett Sturtz. We've talked about this game after game throughout the season, but this one is the most important, and here's why. Mitch Muscari has been real cold in St. Louis. 7 points in 2 games, 2 of 12 shooting, went 0 of 5 in the semifinal game against Belmont. The upside is he has shown success against the Braves, averaging 13 points per game in the 2 outings against Bradley, shooting 4 of 10 in those 2 games. Tavion Banks, along with Bennett Sturtz, has been the most consistent offensive player for the Drake Bulldogs this season. 6th Man of the Year winner in the Missouri Valley Conference as well. He's averaging 10 points against Bradley in those 2 games. Howard, the freshman that has been really impressive in St. Louis, he's averaging 15 points per game in this tournament. Those guys, among the other role players, are really going to need to step up their game and help out Bennett Sturtz because Bradley has controlled Bennett. They are the only team that I have seen consistently cause issues for the Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year. And this is what we saw Wardle game plan against Tucker DeVries in his 2 years as well. And he's done it forever of just forcing the role players to beat you and not the stars. Bennett Sturtz against Bradley, 6 points per game, only team to hold him to under 10 points. Second key is don't let Bradley get comfortable from behind the arc. Bradley shot 25% when Drake beat them on the road. Then they came into Des Moines and they got more comfortable, making 7 3-pointers and shooting 42% from behind the arc. So knowing Bradley has the size and the length and the depth, they're going to want to try to get downhill and cause foul trouble for the Drake Bulldogs, as well as try to open up that 3-point shot. And they just have to be able to communicate and get out and close out on the shooters. Number 3 And this one's really interesting. I learned this from Dave Snell, who's the play-by-play announcer for Bradley, and he teaches classes at Bradley. This is one of his sports broadcasting exam questions and something he has done for every game. And it has worked for 81 straight games now. The longest record was like 230 some. But it's called the magic number. And basically it involves adding and dividing the two teams' points allowed and points for per game. And the number that came out between Bradley and Drake was 70. The first team to hit 70 will win this game. It has worked for 81 straight games for Dave Snell. So we're going to test it out here on Media Row. Drake, they've only hit 70 twice in their last 5 games. Bradley, they've hit 70 in 5 of their last 5. It is going to be another incredible game, like all these games have been in St. Louis. It is going to be really fun to cover, and I can't wait to see what happens today as we will see who punches their ticket and goes to the big dance. Drake and Bradley at 1:15. Kevin Harlan on the call, so get to see Kevin again, which will be really cool. Again, we'll fanboy out, but really, really excited for this one. Can Drake win 3 straight Missouri Valley Conference titles? We will have to wait and see for 1:15. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning along throughout this trip to St. Louis, following on social media. Keep it up. Really appreciate that. Thank you to Kelly's Little Nipper for being the title sponsor for Media Row, as well as Ross Peterson from Agency Iowa helping out and getting me to St. Louis. Thank you to the listeners, and thank you to Devin and Casey for the photos and their help with the Media Row podcast as well, making us look professional. So thank you, all of you, for making this trip possible. Let's have another fun Sunday, Championship Sunday. Tune in again tomorrow, where we will be at our normal time of 2 o'clock, and we will break down all that happens today in our show. So tune in tomorrow at 2 o'clock for Media Row, wherever you get podcasts or YouTube. And make sure to follow, like, subscribe on social media. See you guys Monday.